Hey, Tom Rabbit! I hope you got this for your recording. Hey, YouTube out there. Tom Rabbit likes to record these. Hey, Tom Rabbit!
And so when you say that you are the final adjudicator and that we are all the final adjudicators when it comes down to it, you're really putting yourself, without expounding upon your worldview system, you're really putting yourself in an egocentric predicament where
no, I'm not. Wait, hang on. You're not asking me at all about my worldview. You're telling me what my worldview and what my commitments are. I'll invite you to ask me questions about what I think, and not assign and attribute things to me. I realize you're used to running this presup.
That's the reason why I brought up. I'm
acquainted with this presup line of argument about what is your standard. Okay, and I'm not going to pretend that we're actually having a conversation here. I'm not going to put up with an interrogation. If you want to ask me questions,
you gotta chill out, man. I don't think he was being mean to you.
Yeah,
I don't know why
he wasn't being mean. He wasn't being mean, but he's running a script because he's running a script. Because I don't pretend that feigned civility is civility. I know bullshit. I know bullshit when I hear it.
That's not fair, Ozzy. That's not fair.
Okay,
if nobody's allowed to critique your position, then I really don't see.
I would love it you to critique my position. You're attributing positions to me I don't hold, and I never put up with that.
I've only addressed what you've said so far. And
no,
what
you
said so far is that you are critiquing the Word of God. Well, what I want to know is by what standard you are critiquing the Word of God. And so far, all you've said is that, all you've made clear to us so far is that you are the final determiner when it comes to, you haven't mentioned what it is your standard is, other than your own egocentric opinion.
My standard, I told you, is the same standard you would apply to any other text.
Yeah, my standard is that we live in God's world, and He has sovereignly ordained all that soever comes to pass. And that's how you evaluated
the Bible. You assumed that when you read the Bible.
Well,
no,
how else am I going to?
Because you would have already have to have been a Christian believing those things when you evaluated it. How much would that evaluation have been worth? No, you had to come to the Bible believing something other than what you believe now to conclude what you believe now. Otherwise, you didn't conclude what you believe now. You already would have believed it.
I have always believed in God. And the problem was that previously to my conversion, I was suppressing that truth in unrighteousness. I was suppressing that truth because I loved my sin. Okay, so it isn't that I came to some conclusion that, oh, maybe God exists, I'm going to go with this. No.
So you didn't conclude it. You always believed this?
You always believed this? Yes.
Okay, so you've always believed that the Bible was the inerrant word of God.
No, I've always believed that God exists. And the thing
we're not talking about whether God exists. I'm not talking about whether God exists.
Hey, listen. When it comes to predication, the only way that we can consistently predicate on any matter of fact is only if we have the ability to ascertain absolute truth. Epistemic certainty.
I deny that. I deny that as nearly any epistemologist would. The very idea that you need certainty for predication to be possible, I think, is a position without an argument.
Are you certain about that?
I don't need to be certain about it. That's my position, that one doesn't need to be certain about it. You're arguing in a circle when you say I need to be certain
you need to do this thing, but you're not absolutely.
I'm not absolutely certain about it. I'm not absolutely certain about it.
So how can you say that with authority?
I don't need to be absolutely certain about anything to affirm that I think that something is the case. I just have to have reasons for thinking that it's the case.
Is that true?
I think it's true, yeah.
You think
Obviously, I wouldn't be affirming it. Yeah, I think it's true. Saying I think it's true is not an admission that I think something isn't true. Yep, you could be wrong about what you're saying. You could be wrong about every one of your religious doctrines.
No,
yes, you could.
I can't be wrong about
the fact that you say you can't doesn't make it so.
I wouldn't be able to speak if God hasn't revealed Himself to us himself.
Hold on. I think this is where the disagreement here is.
Okay, no, hang on. This is we were having a nice conversation here before. Now we're running the presup bullshit. I don't put up with it. Okay. I'm sorry.
If that's
Tone, I am not wasting another minute on this feigned civility while someone tells me something manifestly.
Bye.
No, I'm done. I'm not having this conversation.
Ozzy, that's legitimately our epistemology, though. That's how
we can discuss. We can discuss the epistemology. We were having another conversation entirely, and then someone came in and just hijacked the conversation and runs the stupid. How do you know that? How can you be certain? Is it possible that you're wrong? Okay.
All right.
That's
I'm sorry for the critiques.
I don't play that game. I don't play that game. You're going to see a side of me you don't like seeing. This is bullshit.
This is actually what I expected.
The ironic thing is there's no civility card in the reverse.
Of course you expect this from me. This whole script.
I've never seen you act like this ever, Ozzy. This is uncharacteristic.
Look around. You'll see that this is completely characteristic. I don't pretend that an interrogation and running a script is open inquiry and a philosophical discussion and an open exchange of ideas. I will not, absolutely will not participate in this sham.
If you don't, I mean,
no, I'm not, which is why I'm leaving. But anyway, Tone, it was very nice talking to you and the other people before this presup debacle. Have fun with it.
The next day.
Oh my God!
But by the way, I see.
Dude.
On a related note with precepts, I see Ozzy's here, and I heard him talking to this guy JT the other day. I told some people about this, and so I did record this conversation, right? And after Ozzy left, they pretended like Ozzy had like lost his mind or something like that, which is absolutely ridiculous, And then they were denying that they interrupted Ozzy, and then they were like, "Oh well, I'll check the replay." And so, I mean, I have access to the recording, and they interrupted him many times, right? Now, anybody have any idea? Anybody want to make a guess as to whether or not that replay still exists?
Yeah, I think it exists.
It's a big no.
No, there is no replay. They deleted it.
It only exists on your hard drive.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just ridiculous. That JT guy is fucking insufferable.
Yeah, he's a fucking little tool.
I'm happy to hear you recorded that. What I found irritating about that was that I was in that room talking to Tone and some other people, and he and I had a very civil conversation that ranged on a whole range of subjects. It went on for, I think, at least 2 hours. I'm not sure. Maybe it was more, maybe it was less. I think it was 2 hours or more. It was perfectly civil. We disagreed, but it was always, very, very polite. A number of people came in and out of the room, asked me questions. I was in the hot seat the whole time. The whole time for about 2 hours, I was expressing my own views and explaining and unpacking what I thought about various subjects. And it was incredibly civil. And I was so gratified that I was, in that kind of room, the only atheist with a whole bunch of these sort of evangelical types. And it was perfectly civil. And this JT guy walks in and he starts in almost immediately with, by what standard do you, and immediately I knew, oh, here we go. Here's this bullshit presup argument. Of the, how do you know that? Can you be certain? All of that stuff that masquerades as open inquiry, but is really just a scripted interrogation where they disregard every answer you give, cut you off when you're in the middle of answering their questions with, how do you know that? Can you be certain? By what standard? And over again. And I just said, like, I'm tired of pretending that this is an honest conversation, right? I'm tired of having good discussions hijacked in this way. And that's what I found so infuriating. And I keep seeing this happen. I keep going into rooms or listening to discussions in other people's rooms where there is a fruitful and productive conversation, sometimes heated disagreements, but nevertheless respectful, and there's sort of progress being made, and then seeing them derailed by this damn script. And everyone seems to pretend that as long as the person is soft-spoken while being rude in this way and commandeering and hijacking a conversation, everyone seems to pretend that this is okay, that because they're not swearing and flinging shit about, that they're actually still being polite, and we all have to sort of nod along. And I am just sick of this pretense. I don't know. I don't know if something's changed in me, or I guess maybe something's changed in me. Maybe I've just sort of reached my limit on how much of this bullshit I can pretend, is actually civility. But I'm tired of the incivility and pretending that it is civility because there's this veneer of courtesy. They'll say, excuse me, sir, that sort of thing, right?
Right.
Matt Yester and Darth, they'll say, excuse me, sir. And, why are you calling me sir? You always call me Ozzy. Everyone else calls me Ozzy. Why are you calling me sir all of a sudden? Why this pretense of formality and decorum when you are in fact actually being rude, interrupting, condescending? I don't know why people pretend that this is civil discourse. There's nothing civil about it. It is as rude as can be, and it is worse than that. It is slyly rude, right? It pretends to be something that it's not. Right? I mean, I would prefer if they just, called me names. I would much prefer that. I mean, that wouldn't send me out of the room, in frustration, right? What frustrates me is this pretense, but they seem to have figured out that as long as they don't swear at you, and they talk in this soft way, that everyone's going to have to say, "Oh, notice, I'm being civil. I'm doing everything in my power to disrupt this conversation, to not advance the conversation, to be condescending, to interrupt the flow of what you're trying to say." Completely hijacking things, but I'm still being polite because I didn't swear, right? That kind of thing. You get that.
Yeah, and then they act like you're out of line because you're agitated by the bullshit, right? The charade.
Yeah. Well, it's not just that I'm agitated. Like I just tell them now, I'm not going to participate. I'm not cooperating with this. I'm not going to pretend that we're actually having a conversation here. Right, that there's actually a discussion, a back and forth where you're listening to what I'm saying. Like, he kept saying, by what standard, how can you be certain? And like, my position is that one doesn't need to be certain. And your comeback is, yeah, but can you be certain about that? Did you not hear the words that came out of my mouth? I don't think I need to be certain about that. So it doesn't matter that I'm not certain about it. If you think that certainty is an ingredient in knowledge, you need to make the argument for it. But it's hard to even get that sentence out, because before you can get that sentence out, that rebuttal out, they hit you by what standard? Are you certain about that? How do you know that? And so forth, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm just sort of sick of this game of deliberately trying to prevent dialogue with the person that they're supposed to be in dialogue with. I'm tired of this pretense when clearly the game is something else entirely. It is simply trying to show other people they can't answer this question. And I'll prove that by actually not letting them answer. And yet somehow this passes as a reasonable apologetic. I don't understand it, how people are letting themselves fall for this. I mean, this started with Seitan Brignkate, because I remember presuppositionalists, way back in the day, now, this is sort of before Google Hangouts and all that, but I mean, these were largely written type discussions on IRC. I remember them having these kinds of discussions, and they couldn't interrupt you because you were typing. I type and you type, I type and you type, and we could sort of type at the same time, and there was some crosstalk that way, but they couldn't literally cut you off, right? And if they were just ignoring what you were saying, it was evident that they were ignoring what you were saying, right? But in an actual oral discussion, you can cut people off. You can block them. You can literally step on their throats by talking over them. And if you've got mods, well, then you can totally throttle them, right? They've figured out a way to make it seem like other people can't answer their question by literally interrupting them and not letting them answer. And even if they do let them answer, ignoring the content of what was said. Imagine telling a person that you don't think certainty is an ingredient in knowledge. You don't think that's relevant. You don't think that's required. And ask them, why do you think it's required? And then them coming back with, can you be certain about that? I mean, talk about saying something that falls on deaf ears, right? Like they're literally not replying to what you're saying. This is what I mean when I say they're running a script. It's not that just they have a well-rehearsed argument. No, it's that they're literally reading a script. It doesn't matter what you say. They have lines to recite, right? And so it doesn't matter what you say. They can disregard it. It doesn't matter that what they're reciting is inapplicable as a rejoinder to what the objection or the question that you've raised. And anyway, I find it fascinating that people are going along with it and have been for so long.
Well,
yeah, welcome to Tom's rooms. The same thing goes on here.
And you won't see JT speak to you anywhere without mod powers. So if you catch him in a room without him, you could try to discuss it with him again, and he just won't respond to you.
Oh, well, I'm unlikely to have a discussion with him because what came through in this conversation and what I have heard of him before when I've listened in is he doesn't know anything about the subject. He doesn't actually know any epistemology. But when he talks maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's taken some philosophy courses somewhere.
Confused. No.
Yeah, it seems to me he knows absolutely no epistemology. He's never taken logic. He's never taken introductory epistemology. Everything that he's learned on the subject is via this apologetic that he's supposed to apply over and over and over again. And so he has these lines that he just recites without actually having an argument behind them.
So he actually used to be nice and kind of charitable. I talked to him before, and then he kind of started hanging around with Darth, and then became this way over the course of a few months.
Yeah. Well, Darth has this outside influence on people. Some people like a bully, right? You know, if people feel that they're sort of being put down and looked down upon by, the atheist community, and then some guy comes along who's, just, full of piss and vinegar, and rude to them and stuff like that, and tries to pwn them, they don't care too much about the cogency of the arguments. They just like seeing this in action, right? They just like seeing one of the people on their team beating somebody on the other team, and they don't care if they're playing by World Wrestling Federation rules where they're throwing chairs into the ring and stuff like that. Like, they don't care, right? It's just good to see your guy winning, right? By hook or by crook.
Or at least they perceive them as winning. They even might kind of.
Yeah, I mean, but it doesn't matter how they win. It doesn't matter if they win by force of argument or if they win just by a kind of bullying. They're just happy to see their opponents being bullied. Right. It doesn't matter that the guy on their side literally has mod powers and is throttling the other person and preventing them from speaking, and then berating them and condescending to them with some kind of lecture or something like that. That's all good. As long as they're seeing their guy bullying the member of the other team that they find so objectionable.
Well, it's like they get pinned and they're bloodied and battered, and they stand up and raise their arms and think they're won.
And that's exactly what goes on in this room. I keep telling you guys.
Yeah, we heard you, John.
Well, I can't say I've seen anything sort of that way systematically. I mean, I've seen people dogpiling, in these rooms. There's no shortage of bias and dogpiling that happens in atheist rooms. I just don't think there's anything comparable to presuppositionalism on the atheist side. Now, you could see that if you were sort of in a room with Bionic Dance and Aaron Ra and stuff like that. But, those people don't get together and do these sorts of things. But I mean, I think you would see that because those people are really in the habit of arguing very badly for their positions and agreeing with one another. And, there's some people, some atheists who've never heard a bad argument against religion, right? Every argument against religion is a good one.
Right. John has kind of a lot of resentment towards us. I don't know if you were able to detect that, but
no, that was clear. Yeah.
Actually, Ozzy, I'm very surprised at what you're saying right now, because I used to know you from the great debate community with Steve McRae, and you're a very nice, personable person there. And so the way you're reacting now, you seem to be venting at frustration, which is like unlike you from my experience with talking.
Well, it's funny. It always strikes me as odd when I hear people say Ozzy's a nice guy. I'm not a nice guy. I've never tried to be a nice guy. I like to have civil conversations. I mean, really, that's all I give a damn about. And I've always been incredibly impatient in discussions where people try to bully you and silence you and stuff like that. I routinely just say, well, screw this. I'm just going to leave. You know, why? Because I do this as a kind of recreation. And if you're just going to sort of, flip the chessboard all the time, if that's your way of arguing, well, then I'm just going to leave the gaming table. I have dishes and laundry to do, which is going to be more enjoyable than this nonsense. And I've never been a nice guy that way. I just believe in being polite. I'm not interested in sort of making friends or enemies. I never set out to pwn anybody or anything like that. I think that's always kind of an unfortunate thing when people get into it. And I realize people get a lot of enjoyment out of it, but it seems to me that when atheists do it, it's no better than when the presup types set out to do it. But no, I'm not a nice guy. And I think people mistake someone wanting to have conversations and insisting on trying to be civil themselves. They mistake that for, oh, well, he's just sort of meek and mild-mannered. I am fairly mild-mannered in my ordinary life, and I am fairly soft-spoken. But I will argue strenuously for my positions, and when people try to step all over me, I will get pissed off every time, right? It's worse than rude, right? It makes conversations of this sort impossible. It's absolutely poisonous. And I resent it deeply, and I always have. Nothing's changed in that respect. Watch me on the Magic Sandwich Show. Watch me in Google Hangouts and stuff like that.
Now, I noticed you made the distinction between being polite and being nice. I mean, I kind of consider them synonymous.
You have to be polite. Yeah, I mean, nice people are polite, right? But you can be polite without being nice. But it's not important that people be nice. It's not important that people be likable and affable in these rooms, right? That's not important to me, right? I don't require that of anyone. I'd rather someone, who dislikes me just came out and said, I really dislike you, but let's have the argument and stick to the arguments, right? And if they want to toss an insult here and there, I can handle it, right? What I don't like is people that try to sabotage conversations, right? I mean, I've seen Darth do this many times. He'll see a conversation going on. It's all very civil between theists and atheists. He can't stand that. And he'll join the room and he'll take over and he will set, the cat among the pigeons. He just tries to derail things and amp people up and piss people off. He tries to turn people against one another. It offends his sensibilities when he sees theists and atheists actually getting along and having a conversation. They're getting along in that they're being civil with one another. They're not getting along in the sense that they agree. They don't, but they just agree to abide by the norms of civil and rational discourse. He can't stand that. And he sabotages that routinely. And I have no patience for that stuff.
I agree with that. I used to I'm a Christian. I used to go to After Christian a lot, and they used to mod me there. And this is in the early days when Darth Dawkins came to Clubhouse. And, for example, like a Muslim would come and ask about the Trinity, which is a normal thing to do, actually. But Darth Dawkins would just interrogate them, like he's asking the questioner to the point where it just looks really bad. And I actually sent them down to the audience for that. And people got on my case about taking the side of a Muslim. When are you going to take the Shahada? You're giving a platform for Muslims. I mean, there was a lot of support for Darth Dawkins at the time. And I think sometimes his actions are frankly deplorable. And I actually have a rule in my group where it's never to mod Darth Dawkins.
Thank you, Tom Rabbit.